Hello, welcome back to Top Tuesdays, and this is the second top 10 video of the day. A double bill. I just did my top 10 favourite horror films of the past 15 years. Now we go into my top 10 favourite horror films of all time. And here are some 10 honourable mentions of films that I don't quite consider complete horror films. They're either monster movies or they're thrillers. Or comedy horrors, and I just wanted to kind of have my top 10 list be very horror-ish, if you know what I mean, because you have these horror films that they have elements of horror, but they're not quite. So just to rattle them off in no particular order: Jaws. I mean, it is considered a horror film, but it's, you know, it's not quite. I don't know. I didn't want to include it in my top 10 because it would be right at the top, and I feel like I wanted to include films that were more pure horror, even though that film very much does that. The same with the next one, Psycho. King Kong, you know, it's not really a horror film, but it's a monster movie, so it kind of fits under that banner, but I love that film. Troll Hunter, very much in the same vein, a big monster movie, very funny, I love that film. Two kind of thrillers, Misery and Dolores Claiborne, both starring Kathy Bates, both Stephen King adaptations. I find both films very scary in their own way, and I just think they're brilliant films. The Silence of the Lambs, again, great thriller, not quite a horror film. Aliens, one of my favourite films of all time, more of an action horror. The Terminator, which I argue to death that it's a horror film, but a lot of people disagree, so, you know, it's there. And The Invisible Man from the Universal Monster cycle. I love that film so much. Again, not quite a horror, but it's kind of in that banner. So my top 10 favourite horror films of all time. Very hard list to come up with. Again, horror is not my favourite genre, but doing this horror month, I've really seen some cool films. Some honourable mentions would be films like Child's Play, Suspiria, which I recently watched and loved, The Omen, which scared me shitless as a teenager. But going into the top 10, at number 10, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I loved revisiting that this year. I love Freddy Krueger, and I think the original Nightmare on Elm Street film is brilliant. Number 9, Evil Dead 2. This film is just endlessly entertaining. It is just full-on, non-stop entertainment. I love it. It's gory, it's funny, it's wacky, it's inventive, it's great. Number 8, Poltergeist. Love the story, love the cast, the family in this house that get kind of haunted by this, well, not possession, but they get haunted by these poltergeists who kind of kidnap their daughter into another realm through their television set. And great film. I really, really love it. Just very Spielbergian, because he was behind the film, even though he didn't direct it. He kind of did, but, you know, wrote the film, produced it, and all that kind of stuff. Number 7, Day of the Dead. And it's really a toss-up whether I prefer Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, or Day of the Dead on any given day. But if I had a bullet to my head, I'd go with Day of the Dead. I love this film. Some of the best practical effects you'll ever see in a horror film. These people living underground from the zombie apocalypse, and drama, a strife, and also questioning the soul of the zombie and whether or not there's anything behind those kind of glazed over eyes once the zombie turns in George Romero's universe. Number 6, The Fly, Jeff Goldblum, classic film, David Cronenberg. Amazing special effects again about this guy who builds these 2 pods, teleportation devices, and he goes through, but he went through with a fly and he had a wound on him, and so he turns into this kind of half man, half fly hybrid, and we see this disintegration of a man, and it is one of the most fascinating things you'll ever see. I think it's an amazing film, and performed particularly well by Jeff Goldblum himself. Number 5, The Shining. Just one of the best horror films ever. You know, Jack Nicholson is amazing in this film. The kid is amazing in this film. The direction is stunning. It's just one of those visually incredible films that takes your breath away sometimes with some of the shots, and just a masterpiece of horror. Number 4, Shaun of the Dead. Now again, this isn't a better film than The Shining, which is why this is my favourite list. Going to see that film in 2004 in the cinema was one of the best cinema experiences of my entire life. Coming off of the TV show Space, which I was such a huge fan of, and this is very much an extension of that in many ways. It kind of almost grew out of an episode they did where they had kind of a scene with Tim shooting zombies in his apartment because he sat up playing Resident Evil 2 all night and kind of gets hallucinations, and that kind of birthed Shaun of the Dead. I just think it's an amazing zombie film. It's a hilarious comedy film at the same time, and it has romance. It just has a little bit of everything. And I just think that this is just non-stop entertainment. Very much like Evil Dead in that sense, and it completely entertains you throughout the entire film. The pacing is fucking perfect. The direction is inventive. It's great to watch on screen from Edgar Wright. He just put this film together so well. The writing is spot on. The cast is hilarious and funny. But when you get to the kind of dark emotional moments, you still feel the punch of it, despite most of the film being, you know, very much a comedy. Number 3. The Exorcist. I only just watched this a few days ago, but it's jumped right up there. If I ever want to sit down and watch a horror film that will creep me out and will potentially scare me, it's going to be The Exorcist. One of the, if not the best horror film ever made. Incredible. It blew me away. Number 2, it's The Thing. Amazing film. Just reviewed it. You know, these guys out in this Antarctic base, and this shape-shifting alien kind of invades the camp, and they have to deal with it, and the paranoia of whether the alien has kind of assimilated part of the group, and whether they're looking at their fellow friend and worker and colleague, or they're looking at this thing from another world that is going to kill them and assimilate them as well. Probably the best practical effects ever done in a horror film. Unbelievable. The mood, the tension, the atmosphere, top notch. John Carpenter nailed it with this film. It's incredible, masterpiece. And I could really switch between number 2 and number 1 as far as my favorite horror film, but number 1 is of course Ridley Scott's Alien. Just one of those films that came out of a perfect storm, from the guy who wrote the film to H.R. Giger being involved with the alien design. Just a stroke of kind of mad genius and dark, disturbing genius. And then you have people who came in to do the design of the ships. It just all comes together. The characters, the writing, the performances, everything in this film works. It's almost a perfect film. And again, we talked about it in October, but for me it is my favorite horror film of all time. And that's it. So thank you for watching. Let me know your favorite horror films. If you have a top 10, if you've done a video about it on your YouTube. If you're not a YouTuber, just leave your top 10 in the comments down below. And yeah, just let me know what your favorite horror films are. Whether you disagree with any of the films on my list, of course. We all have our opinions, but that's it. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.
So you might say he's a really nice guy, really, but if fucking don't cut shit with me. He says he's really cool, but I think he's a tool.